When I was teaching at the University of Pennsylvania, I had two undergraduate students who hung around with me a lot. They decided to go to graduate school in sociology. Both of them were interested in rural sociology. There's all kinds of urban sociology. They were interested in rural sociology. And the best school for that is Cornell University. So the two of them applied, and both of them were accepted at Cornell. One was brilliant. The other was average. And the brilliant one was more than brilliant. He was incredible. And he was also an atheistic Marxist. And they decided to room together. And I thought, oh no. This brilliant guy is going to argue my Christian brother out of this faith. About a year and a half later, I met them together. And the atheist, Marxist, had become a Christian. And when they began to shake, I said, I don't get it. I thought it would be the other way around. I thought you were going to win all the arguments and he was going to lose his faith. He said, I did win all the arguments. Every night, it seemed. We'd have this long argument, and I would make everything he believed ridiculous. And I'd show them how ridiculous it was. And at the end of the argument, he said, my buddy here, he would always smile and say, you beat me again. You did it again. You showed that what I believe is totally idiotic. But Charlie, I know Jesus. I know he's within me. I feel his presence every day. All the arguments in the world are no match for my experience.
Right. A man with an experience is never at the mercy of a man with an argument.
And he said, in the end, his experience won me over. That's what the world's looking for. The world's not looking for a brilliant argument. They're looking for what Bill Maher found in that trailer.
Yeah.
A person with an experience with Christ. And he had an awareness that unlike the other people he would interview, these people had an experience that was real, and it could not be argued away.
The problem with arguing is somebody may know more words than you.
Yeah.
And
let me tell you a funny story. When I taught at the University of Pennsylvania, you can so set up your course and so set up the development of the material that believing in God almost becomes an a priori assumption, and that nothing makes sense without that. And so I did that when I was at Penn. And I was in New York about 8 or 9 years ago, and I haven't taught at Penn for 20 years. And a young woman came running up to me, Dr. Campolo, I'm so glad to see you. I had you for Sociology 1 at the University of Penn. Oh, it was wonderful. I believed in God that whole year.
Oh, my.
That whole year. And you begin to see what it is. Even if you win the argument, you haven't won the person.
A baby can't be argued out of the womb. Yeah. You got to love them. Yeah. You know.
That'll preach. Do you preach that?
No.
That'll make a good
But I've said it before because I've just realized arguing won't work. All right. Tony, you want to talk about Darwinism.
Yeah.
What about it?
Well, you know, I wrote an article for the Philadelphia Inquirer, an op-ed piece, raising the question.
You read it or wrote it?
Wrote it.
Wrote it.
And they were pleased with it. They loved it because it raised a very important question that's never been raised. You know, there's this big argument as to whether or not we should teach intelligent design in the public school.
Right.
And whether we should teach creationism. I asked the question whether we should teach Darwin. Now, I wrote the article and said, I'm not going to raise the question about whether it is possible for there to be a biological process by which species mutate and form higher forms of life. I don't even want to deal with that. The problem is that most people haven't bothered to read Darwin. They just think they know what Darwin said. Actually, in The Origin of Species, the full title is The Origin of Species, or The Survival of Superior Races. You say, what are you suggesting, Campolo? I'm not suggesting anything. That if you read Darwin, you will see that he was a racist of the highest order. He wrote 2 books, The Origin of Species is the one that most people know. His second book was The Descent of Man. And in this book, he argues that certain races are superior and other races are inferior. I mean, like Hitler. As a matter of fact, in the article, I cite how often the ideologues of Hitler referred to Darwin to support their thesis that the German people were a superior race, that they had evolved. They quoted Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche, who once said, if it was the destiny of the ape to transcend itself and produce man, is it not the destiny of man to transcend himself and produce the Superman? You can see what Hitler did with that.
Sure.
You see, we're the super race, and racism suddenly was propagated with a Darwinian theory that in the evolutionary process, certain races are superior to other races. He goes so far in The Descent of Man to make the case that certain races ought to be eliminated because they are so inferior. And he cites as two cases the Aboriginal people of Australia, and he says there are many tribes in Africa that ought to be eliminated because he says there are limited resources. And in the struggle for survival, these superior races should not sacrifice what they need in order to perpetuate inferior groups of people. Oh. Now, interestingly enough, William Jennings Bryan, you know that name, in the Great Scopes Trial. A lot of people don't know this, but Bryan did not believe in a six-day creation. He knew that God created the universe, but he didn't know how long it took. Whether it took 6 days or 6 million years, he didn't care. He was opposed to evolution for a very simple reason. He had just returned from Germany, and the German militarists that he met there had convinced them that if you believed in evolution, then you should believe that war is a good thing, because war is an instrument whereby inferior nations are destroyed and inferior peoples are obliterated and wiped off the face of the earth. If you really believe in the survival of the fittest, in natural selection, you should in fact be very encouraged by war, because war is a way of eliminating inferior people. Whoa. And so you can see what I did with this article. I said, is this what we want our children to learn in school? Do we want them to study Darwin? Or do we want them to just not think they have studied Darwin? Because Darwin himself is not something that I want to see propagated in the public school system of this country or any country, because it leads to beliefs of racial superiority, inferiority, and actually calls for legitimating war. It's an argument that has social implications. As a matter of fact, in sociology, we actually have a term for it. We call it social Darwinism. Social Darwinism, as opposed to biological Darwinism. So we don't argue with the biology. There was your lovely dog is here. Oh, look,
Stanley.
Oh, Stanley is such a cute dog. Now, there is a superior species.
I know it.
Yeah, by far.
Bo's over there laying on the ground. They're both bored with everything you're saying.
Yeah, well, he seems to be more interested than you are.
Yeah, Stanley.
Yeah, Stanley's, his eyes are bright.
Look at those eyes.
Look at those eyes.
People can't see him.
You are really interested in Darwin, aren't you?
Get a shot of him real fast.
Okay, you got to get a shot of Stanley. We want you to get a little shot of.
Move that pillow.
Yeah, I gotta let you see. There's Stanley. Oh, nice Stanley. Yeah. As a matter of fact, you can just leave him stay there. Yeah. Okay.
A little bit of Bo.
Okay. There's Bo. These are the two dogs that dominate this household.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Back to Darwin.
Back to Darwin.